high-value homes are being severely undertaxed.
We know that the system that people are using is not working.
But the last 2 years have been insane, so you can't attack the assessor.
Nobody aspires to be the most hated man in the county.
There's a secret racket happening in America. It's money hidden in wine cellars and pool houses, policies, algorithms, and assessors' offices, forming an assessment gap that has implications on our nation's health, fairness, and the American dream of building intergenerational wealth. In Western North Carolina, critical research is confirming what people have been saying for decades. Through property assessments, wealthy Americans are skirting paying their fair share, straining city budgets and placing the burden on less wealthy neighbors, whose lives are already becoming increasingly more expensive. This is the reverse Robin Hood grift of how low and middle income homeowners are being made to pay the property tax responsibility of rich homeowners in Asheville, North Carolina, and across the United States. While we may at times have concerns about the use of our tax dollars, there's no question that property taxes pay for many of the vital services we use every day, like roads, sewer lines, parks, schools, and so on. If some people are not paying their fair share for these services, that presents a real issue for our cities. Unfortunately, this has been going on for a long, long time. 1873, New York State. Property assessors James A. Briggs, Sterling G. Hadley, and John S. Fowler travel all across New York, interviewing local property assessors and supervisors under oath, and they inspect the local property tax rolls. In their report to the state, they said, "The small house and lot of the laborer or mechanic is often found to be assessed at 60% of its value, while the better class of dwellings up to the palatial mansion are valued by the assessor at 40, 30, and often at 20%. They find that the existing system is unequal, unjust, and oppressive." 150 years after Briggs, Hadley, and Fowler revealed the truth about this scheme, unfair assessments still plague counties all across the United States. While there have been countless affirmations of this since then, in 2021, Dr. Christopher Berry published the most comprehensive study of this unfair tax system to date. The aptly named Property Tax Project has been created so that people like you, me, journalists, local leaders, can finally apply pressure to fix unfair taxes.
It's going to be harder and harder for the rest of the assessment community to deny this problem when you have more of the leading jurisdictions who are acknowledging it and working on fixing it. And I'm very optimistic that 5 years from now, the way the assessment community as a whole thinks about this problem will have changed.
And the Just Accounting Project is what it looks like to synthesize this knowledge with local expertise in Western North Carolina. Until people can put faces and consequences to this unfair tax system, things aren't going to change. So let's go ahead and do that. In the Montford district of Asheville, Mr. Lordman's tax assessment grew faster relative to wealthier neighbors nearby.
Well, it isn't fair because I live on a fixed income. And when they going up on taxes, my income is set. And so I'm getting poorer and poorer as I pay taxes.
Their Social Security or their retirement funds does not increase. They budgeted for a certain amount. And, after a decade or two of this type of, increase every 2 to 4 years or whenever they decide to increase it, it can throw people's budgeting off, and you have a lot of elders that may end up forced to sell their homes or, inadvertently losing their homes through foreclosure.
If inflation is inevitable and over a home's lifetime its value will appreciate, then sure, a homeowner will pay more in yearly taxes. But this is missing the main issue. It's not that tax assessments will never change. The problem is whose assessments are increasing and whose aren't.
So in Mr. Lordman's case, his property has grown 19% more than what it was 4 years ago, which is an accelerating path of extra tax dollars they pay, even though his family's on a fixed income. Contrast that with Biltmore Forest. We found that Biltmore Forest as a whole has lost value over time. And there's several houses and mansions that we've pulled where they're actually losing value. So how is it that there's fairness in the system when one residential neighborhood of high wealth is actually losing value while what Mr. Lordman is experiencing here is an increase in value. That doesn't seem fair across the system.
Lanier Hagerty has been researching property tax iniquities in Western North Carolina with the Just Accounting Project, and she can break this down for us.
In order to measure the fairness and accuracy of assessments, we looked across the housing value spectrum to see how close assessed values were to a home sale price that year. So sale price is the best estimate of market value, and according to law, the assessed value should be equal to the market value. Our analysis involved ordering homes sold in 2021 by sale price, dividing all sales evenly into 10 groups or deciles, and taking the median value from each group as a representative sale. We then looked at how each home's assessed value compared to its selling price. Our research has shown discrepancies between assessed values and market value. This is a phenomenon we call the assessment gap. The problem is that these discrepancies are not randomly distributed errors. Instead, we find that homes of lower value tend to be overassessed when compared to higher value homes. Another way to say this is that our findings suggest that assessments are regressive. Regressive assessments lead to regressive taxation, in which owners of low value property pay too much in taxes while owners of high value properties pay too little. This kind of regressive tax system shifts the collective tax burden from high-value property owners to lower-value property owners, putting a strain on the city's most financially vulnerable residents.
People can lose their homes for failing to pay what are often unfair taxes. In other words, people may have been overtaxed in the first place, but are unable to pay those taxes that are too high, and that can result in their losing their home. And that gets to a second kind of indirect effect, which is the destruction of generational wealth. When somebody who has reached a point of home ownership ends up losing the home for tax reasons, that's destroying that generational wealth that might have gone to the next generation in their family who could have inherited the home.
In Buncombe County, our findings suggest that for every $100 that owners of high-value homes are paying in property taxes, owners of low-value homes are paying $110.
If high-value homeowners aren't paying their fair share, this means a combination of things. A city is missing out on millions or billions of dollars, or they're raising taxes on everyone to make up that lost revenue.
Property taxes are very important. They make up by far the largest single source of income for our community.
Beyond the high value of uncollected taxes that could contribute to essential services or amenities in a city, another unfortunate consequence of this unfair system is that it divides neighbors and creates distrust in local government.
An extra heavy burden lands on people who are least able to afford it, which is kind of common in our culture in general. But even just having some consistency from the tax assessor about how they conduct assessments. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that we have such great disparities from one neighborhood or even from house to house.
Taxes is one of the most sacred things. You're taking people's hard-earned money and you're using it for good causes in your government, but it needs to be done in an unbiased fashion, needs to be done in a manner that is fair.
A national study is a great starting point, but in order for change to happen, it needs to be used alongside local knowledge and expertise to solve the unique issues in each area.
My neighbor's taxes are over here in this area. Oh, my friend over here knows this person or that person, and so their taxes are a little lower. And, the inconsistency in a small town, that is not where local government needs to be.
And in areas that have a history of redlining, this insidious pattern continues to show itself.
In Buncombe County, we conducted a neighborhood-level study to understand tax assessment implications for historically Black neighborhoods over time. We found that over the last 20 years, Shiloh, a predominantly Black neighborhood in Asheville, has been consistently overassessed in comparison to predominantly white neighborhoods like Lakeview Park. We found that millions of dollars of property taxes have been unfairly collected from Shiloh residents over the years. This is evidence that regressive tax burdens fall not only on low-income communities, but disproportionately on Buncombe County's communities of color.
We can't do this work without talking about the racial aspect of it, and it's designed to do exactly what it's doing.
So clearly, for various reasons, this system is unfair. But these assessors didn't create the system, they're working within it. This is an essential job, so hopefully your assessor is aware of the shortcomings of our current system and is working to improve the fairness and accuracy of assessed values in their jurisdictions.
Well, I mean, if you've got any kind of conscience at all, and you're going to face your neighbors in the grocery store, then you you had best, have some integrity and do the absolute best that you can.
We don't normally have a difficult time getting interviews with who we want, but when trying to secure interviews with assessors, it was tough getting one to commit. Luckily, Blair Hyder from Mitchell County agreed to speak with us. His perspective can hopefully point us to potential solutions. One of these suggestions is leveraging technology to perform better comparisons on assessments.
So I can run that statistic on that neighborhood level all the way up to the market level, which takes in all the neighborhoods within that market, or I can run it for the whole county. The statistics are the key to the whole thing.
Better software means better analysis, and this should let us see whether the ideal ratio is being met. Also, a more uniform use of this technology, be it software or reporting devices, can allow offices to be more efficient, allowing them to become more accurate by reassessing more often.
But basically, it's a hard job, it's a complicated job, and so there are some reasons why regressivity can get baked into some of the estimates, and you have to take a bit of an extra effort to try to fix them. And so I think what's really going on is not that assessors are going out and like trying to create regressive assessments, is just that they're not working as hard as they could and should to fix them. And when they become aware of it, not taking the actions to fix them. And as you said, oftentimes they're sending reports to a state bureau that oversees them with no enforcement that comes. So in Illinois, for example, the Illinois Department of Revenue has created reports for years on assessment practices in all the local jurisdictions. And we looked at those reports, and 90% of them in the reports show that the assessments are regressive for a decade. And no action takes place. So I think it's more the inaction. At some point, I do start to say, if you are not taking action in the face of what you know is an injustice, you do start to look a bit like the bad guy, even if you didn't create the injustice intentionally.
The system isn't working, but we do have a kind of Bandaid, the appeals process. The main issue with the appeals process, though, is that it's mostly wealthy homeowners who are appealing anyway. That doesn't tell the whole story, though.
But the people who live there, if they have a little bit of money or don't have any money, it's more about who they know and who they grew up with in the county. It's a small county. If you're the right age, that you went to high school with the person working in this office. So there's a little bit of that goes on that kind of ameliorates what you were talking about, whether it's just rich or poor, because there's a lot of people that you wouldn't consider rich, but their family's been well connected.
And if you're not wealthy or well connected, good luck.
You protest, they give you a form to fill out when you don't agree with the amount that you are taxed. And it's just wasting ink.
It's important that the appeals process exists, but I think it's reasonable to conclude that the current administration of the appeals process mostly serves wealthy or well-connected homeowners, which ultimately just cements these unfair results anyway. At Strong Towns, we don't just accept things the way they are, we fight for our places. Fixing this broken tax assessment system is going to require local action and a grassroots effort to reform the system from the county up to the state. In order to change systems, we need to start by learning about them.
Right? You can't really tell from only seeing your own tax bill whether you're being treated fairly or whether the system is fair. And the reason is, one of the things assessors sometimes do is they underassess everybody by at least a little bit, but they underassess the people at the top by more. And so even when you're underassessed by 10%, you may be on the losing end of this system. You may still be overtaxed.
If we want to make this property assessment process more fair, then we need transparent local accounting. We need to conduct more assessments more often, making sure that homes are staying close to the ideal ratio. We need better models and technology so that we can identify problems earlier and allow state departments of revenue to actually hold assessors accountable. If we do this well, then many people might actually see a reduction in taxes, especially those who are way overassessed. There are going to be growing pains as the system becomes more fair. It's going to take local pressure to go through these inconvenient but necessary measures to make appraisals more accurate.
One of the reasons I created the Property Tax Project website is to make it easy for people, ordinary citizens or journalists or policymakers, easy for people to find out how is their own local community faring on these issues of tax fairness and tax regressivity. So if you go to propertytaxproject.uchicago.edu, you can select an area, a county or a city, and get a report that will show you the extent of the problem.
This is an important place for me to remind you that you can't do this alone. There are likely already people doing the work where you live, so join them. Momentum is building. After Fritz Kagi, a reform-minded assessor in Cook County, was elected, the county started to see some progress in reducing regressivity. In Western North Carolina, the Just Accounting Project is a similar step in the right direction. But this work needs to continue.
I think assessors, to the extent that they want to avoid acknowledging or working on this problem, they thrive on how opaque the system is and how hard it is to explain to people. And that basically allows them to keep it under the rug. And so I think one of the reasons we had such major reforms in Chicago is that we had local journalists who were willing to devote energies to this, and they published a series of important stories about it, and other jurisdictions can do the same thing.
This is why a local focus is so important. Yes, on a national scale, we're not going to have some kind of Pepsi commercial kumbaya moment of restorative justice. But if a city as divided as Chicago can take steps to try and figure this out, why can't yours?
I would say that, assessors who really want to fix this problem can now start to look at some examples of how it's been done. It's challenging, particularly if you're a small assessing office. So I don't want to say it's an easy roadmap, but I think we're beginning to see what the ingredients are of a successful reform.
If you want to get cooking on this, then check out the Property Tax Project. If you think you need a more local kind of study, then look into the Just Accounting Project. Also, consider joining a local conversation because this work can't be done alone. Keep doing what you can to make your town a stronger one, and we'll see you next time.